Well, welcome to the Pulse Neighbors. I'm your host, Julius Clark, joined by our amazing guest today, Nick Giulioni. He's got a whole bunch of things going on with him. Mainly how I know him is through off-leash construction, but going to have him tell us a little bit about who he is and dig into how he got to where he is today.
Oh boy. Well, thanks for having me on, man. I'm really excited. I've been listening to a couple of the recent episodes and feel like you're crushing it. You're doing something a little different, a little new. So thanks for coming to the market and doing that. Yeah, man. I've been in the game here now since about 2016, 2017. Quick background on me. I'm from Southern California. That's where I grew up, met my wife, and really had a career in e-commerce sales. Super boring for people interested in real estate, but I would work with these different gamer companies. I'd work for like Razer and Corsair, and I would sell to the large players like the Amazons, the Best Buys, and that was a really cool, really rewarding career. Something I was particularly good at, but I had that catalyzing moment back in 2017. Oh, pardon me, 2016. I just got married, just bought my first house, which was a house hack, and we could talk a little bit about that if your listeners aren't super familiar with that. And I had my job publicly threatened by just an absolutely terrible boss. He told me that if I didn't do something which was illegal, he was going to find somebody who would. And thankfully, I was able to worm my way out of that situation. I didn't have to do anything illegal, but I knew in that moment that I needed to change my situation. I needed to be able to give that guy the middle finger and walk out the door if that ever happened again. And so that's when I began really looking into real estate investing beyond my own market. Because California, let me tell you, that was an expensive house, and it was not nice enough to justify it. And so all these influencers were working out here in Indianapolis, and I followed along and bought a turnkey. Went great. Actually, no, that's a lie. Did not go great. But my investing grew from there. I learned a lot in that first one. Ended up over the next several years accumulating 60 or 70 properties. Shortly thereafter, in 2020, after having all the bad property managers, we can go down that path if you want. In 2020, I moved out here. COVID sent everybody home, and thankfully that meant that my wife and I got sent home as well. We said, screw it, let's move out to Indy for 6 months. It's been 4 years. We're still here. We love it. It's been going really well. And so, I built up a portfolio, ended up in 2022 going full time. Have been investing, still have about 60 or 70 units today, but I did 1031 a bunch of units back in 2022 into a couple of wedding venues. It's that whole converting equity to cash flow situation. So that's been a really cool change. And then also in 2022, at that point in time, I was doing 10 to 15 flips at a time. Things were going really, really well, except for the fact that I realized the contractors suck. They are the hardest and worst part of the entire experience, despite the fact that I'm here. Like, I was able to go out to my projects. I still couldn't keep guys working on projects effectively. They were off budget. They were way over time. And so I said, screw it. Like, I'm going to hire a guy to come work for me. And that's kind of the genesis of off-leash construction. Now, he was just working for me on my projects, and everything started going really well. He would walk around and yell at all my contractors. It was great. And he's a GC himself, Paul Aguirre. If anybody hasn't met him, they should, if they're here in the indie market. And so, he started working for me. My projects really started going well. All my friends started asking, hey, can you do my project too? And off-leash construction really started bringing on third-party clients. And in the last year or so, we've done several $1 million worth of scopes of work for people, helping to protect the people of Indianapolis, not get screwed over by bad contractors. So I just talked at you for like the last 5 minutes. I'm sure there've got to be a couple of questions there along the way.
Yeah, there certainly are. I mean, everybody gets started on their road to real estate in a different way. You got started off really fast and kind of realized really quickly that getting your systems optimized and even in-housing contracting was going to be the way to go for you. My biggest question was what finally was the deciding factor on how to get your contracting started off in-house, and how did you do it? It's not like an everyday task. Not everybody knows how to do all the tasks that contractors are going to need to get done.
Yeah.
Were you educated enough to get going, or where were you?
Oh God, no.
When you got started?
No, God, no. Still not educated enough to be a contractor, very honestly. The truth of the matter is I'm a systems guy. I'm a systems thinker. I work really well with other people. I really, I believe in the book, Who Not How. yes, could I eventually become a contractor if I wanted to? Absolutely. I could go to school. I could go and apprentice under people. I could go do it the right way and come up that way. That's not where my superpower is. My superpower is connecting people. My superpower is talking, creating connection, creating confidence. And so for that reason, I have Paul. He works with me. He's my business partner. I gave him a huge, he earned a huge piece of the off leash construction business. And so I brought him in. He's the construction arm. He's the smart one there. He's the one you want walking a house. You don't want me there. I had no value walking a house. So it was really just, hey, this guy was working for me and he could be working for other people. What I was able to go out there and do is I was able to build the systems. There are several things contractors are really, really bad at. They're bad at communication. They're bad at invoicing. They're bad at keeping guys on jobs. They're bad at keeping on schedule and on budget. Like all of these things are really hard. And I can't say that we're perfect within the off-leash construction side, but I've essentially created the infrastructure to go do that effectively, to make sure that we're communicating on a bi-weekly basis with our clients, that they're getting regular updates on what's going on, that the invoicing is happening behind the scenes, which you tend to find with a lot of contractors, especially on the investor side, which I'm assuming most of the people that we're listening to here are investors, is, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you tend to find is a lot of times that the contractors aren't giving fair warning about when invoices are going to be due, and it becomes an emergency because they've run out of money. Like if communicating throughout the process, making sure that everybody understands when payments are going to happen. All of these things are the back end things that contractors aren't good at for the most part. I'm sure there are a couple, but their superpower is being in front of the project, of hammering on the project, making sure that things are done appropriately, not the back end QuickBooks stuff. I'm a computer monkey. So I guess that's my quick answer is I'm not qualified to be a contractor. You shouldn't have me ever go look at your house. But making sure that you surround yourself with people who have that skill set is important.
Yeah, Paul's definitely really good at what he does. I've walked a couple of houses with him now, and I can get the general gist out of what I want the house to look like, or I'm trying to communicate from my buyer clients to him, and then he's able to actually synthesize that into what the SOW is going to look like and what the property needs. So, pretty valuable asset you guys have got.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And the other piece of this that I'll touch on that I think kind of sets us apart from most contractors. One, like, we're not thirsty. We're not hungry for our next job. We got plenty of stuff going on. So we're not like trying to win every project. We try and talk people out of as many projects as we try to talk them into. We're investors ourselves. We know how to analyze these things. We understand what the ARV needs to look like. We want to see comps so that we understand what level of quality we need to hit. That impacts our budgets very substantially from a materials perspective. And then we tell the people like, hey, like, we wouldn't do this deal ourselves. We're constantly analyzing deals for our own projects. We're talking about off-leash construction, but off-leash investments is a customer of off-leash construction. And that's my company that does all the flipping and burring here in Indianapolis. And so we try and talk people out of probably half to 2/3 of the projects they send us because the numbers just aren't going to make sense.
Yeah. So I'm curious also how you've got off-leash investments and off-leash construction working together. Is investments just you, or are you looking out to gain capital elsewhere as well to get these flips going and keep the investment side of the company up?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The investments isn't something that's necessarily looking for partners in a traditional equity sense, but we do work with quite a few private money lenders out there and offer pretty solid terms. Private money, for anybody who's not familiar, is essentially a debt position in most situations. We put mortgages on the property. So yeah, we have private money lenders that we work with that help us take down a lot of projects that we're able to do. And what's really cool there is that off-leash construction is able to then, very quickly and easily put together the quote on the project so that we're able to get that project over the finish line.
Yeah, sweet. That's a great optimization technique to get involved with. That's great. With construction and getting that going in Indianapolis, where did you see yourself growing, and have you become that, or in what ways have you grown into something entirely different to fit the market needs?
Oh man, it's funny that you bring this up today. I set a goal at the beginning of the year that hey, I wanted us to do $4 million worth of like active scopes of work for the year. I think we're well on track to exceed that, given that we've got over $1 million that we're currently have guys on jobs for 2024. So fundamentally, we think that there's a gap in the market, and we'll talk about a couple of them that exist. First and foremost is there historically been two types of contractors that have existed. On one side, there's the retail guy, the guy that you would use in your Carmel house, there, your really nice house in Meridian Kessler, wherever you're living. It's going to go in there and do the $100,000 kitchen that's my wife drools over, or like the really nice bathrooms. They're going to be very expensive. They're going to be much more about it, not necessarily an investment, but about emotion tied to it. Yeah. Then you have the guys that have been working here in the investment circle for the longest time, that are glorified handymen for the most part. They can do great work. Don't get me wrong, but you have to understand how to work with them effectively. We think that there's something in the middle, where it's, hey, this is not a glorified handyman. This isn't the retail guy. You bring some of the experience and the quality of the retail side down. You bring some of the volume and cost effectiveness of the handyman up, and you meet somewhere in the middle. And that's really where we've excelled over the last several months to years. And it was really where I was seeing the hole in the market for my own portfolio, my own flips on a day-to-day basis. So yes, that's exactly where we're hitting. We're staying pretty darn busy from that perspective. The other thing that obviously we're starting to do some more retail jobs. That's something that helps to fill out the portfolio a little bit, allows us to go and flex our muscles. It's honestly the stuff that we get to put on social media that's a little bit sexier than the $200,000 Beach Grove house, which, to be clear, I do a lot of $200,000 Beach Grove houses, but they're not necessarily the ones that are drool worthy on Instagram. The last thing, and this has been an accidental business that we got into, but we were noticing that a lot of our clients either were using a weren't using a property manager and needed like handyman type stuff, more maintenance type of projects. And so here in 2024, we actually started a maintenance arm just to service a couple of our clients who aren't using property managers. But what's funny is, we brought on a full-time guy. We're hopefully going to bring on a second one here very shortly to just run maintenance for us. What's funny is that then we had all these property managers start reaching out to us. So now we're getting hit up by property melds all the time because apparently finding a good handyman is hard too. You can't find a good contractor. You can't find a good handyman. So Off Leash Construction is trying our darndest to be both of them. Do we have room for improvement? Absolutely. But I think we're certainly putting the effort in there.
As a property manager, I can say that it is challenging to find a good, consistent handyman. I have a great, consistent handyman, but he is a contractor, so he's busy. He's got a job, so I don't have the readiness that I need to. Like, that's why I've got to go install a dryer tonight instead of my handyman going to do it. But it's fine. I get my hands dirty here and there, but
that's a good PM for you.
Yeah. I can definitely tell you why there's property managers reaching out, because that's the most variable part of my business as a property manager. Is I never know when maintenance is going to come up, so I can't hire somebody full time unless I've got 120, 150 doors, and I know I'm going to have consistency. But when I'm less than 50 doors, it's impossible to find that consistent job nature for them.
Well, I'll even just comment on that, and I don't know if you want to go down this path, but even if you've got the 120, even if you've got 200, even if you've got 500 doors, that's not the business you're in. And so like, even if you could potentially hire somebody, like, understanding that sometimes outsourcing is the right answer. I know that's a totally biased thing to say, but like, these PMs that we're working with, these aren't small guys. These are guys that could very well have somebody on staff, but have made the decision that they don't want to do that. So it's totally a decision. Like, do you want to be in the maintenance business?
Yeah, it's a headache. That's for sure. That's for sure. This is again down a different path. I've been contemplating the idea. It wouldn't happen this year, but down the road, of like lawn care. That's another thing that people don't like include in their property management services. But every house needs it. If you're in an area where it is common for you to have that provided for your renters, I think it's a great thing to incorporate into your business. I'm not doing it right now, but when I've got the time, it's definitely something I wanna put in there as well.
Dude, I love it. Thinking about those alternative income streams there.
Well, I think I got to talking with you the one time we did get to talk in person at the Roots Happy Hour about how I want to eventually use urban agriculture as an alternate income source, using trees off the back of people's properties. So can't wait to get that started here. I'm going to be buying a couple trees at least this year. We'll see when they actually get planted on other people's properties, but I'm keeping them in my place for now.
Dude, I love it.
Sweet, man. Well, we talked a little bit on before we got on the show, the fact that you've got other things going on as well outside of off leash, and we're touching on additional income sources. What else do you got going on today?
Yeah, I would say, obviously we've got the rental portfolio. That's been really good to us over the last several years. It's been really good to own rentals over the last 6-7 years, just in general. With that in mind, one of the things that we did do in 2022 was, so many people are just constantly looking at the only way that these deals make sense is to have significant cash flow on them. I generally have the opinion that I buy every house with the intention of having a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year time horizon on that house. I've never owned one of these houses for more than 5 years. I tend to churn them, turn them, and turn that equity into something else. So all these people that have these 5-10 year retirement goals, and they're like, well, I'm going to need so many houses at $100 a door to make that happen. I think are thinking about it a little bit wrong. Over time, there are 5 ways you make money in residential real estate. You've got cash flow, you've got the loan pay down, you've got the appreciation, the tax benefits, and the inflation hedging. All 5 of those are benefiting you. Whether or not it's hitting your bank account on a day-to-day basis, you're getting the other 4. So with that in mind, that's my long-winded way of saying I had a lot of equity in some houses. And so what I ended up doing in 2022 was what's called a 1031 exchange, where you sell a bunch of real estate assets, or it could be one big real estate asset, and you essentially have a certain time limit. It's usually 180 days to go purchase another real estate asset for the same or more dollars than what you sold. Oversimplification. Probably not worth going into all the details. You probably need a tax professional to talk through all those the particulars there. But I sold all those houses, 17 houses, and turned it into a wedding venue that was for sale down in Bloomington. Now, I didn't intend to get into the wedding business. I thought I was just going to buy an apartment. And so I just went on Zillow and I cranked the minimum up, and was expecting some apartment buildings, and stumbled across what is, I think, the nicest wedding venue I've ever seen. It's 125 acres down in Brown County. It's just absolutely lovely with a couple of houses on it. And so, yes, that is the other business I got into. Is I run now 2 wedding venues down in that area. One's called the Wilds and one is called Laurel Mill. And very different challenges in running a couple wedding venues. I've got 3 full-time people who work with me who are absolutely incredible. And yeah, new challenges of liquor licenses and stuff like that you just don't have to necessarily think about so much when you're just worrying about flipping a house here.
Yeah. Simple way to kind of put together a 1031 exchange. You got store credit on real estate, essentially.
I like it. Yeah, you got to spend it. But yeah, it was a really cool opportunity, really good way to grow. And I got my cash flow went up substantially when I converted that equity into cash flow. I made the decision to convert equity to cash flow. So just as you're analyzing properties, don't buy negative cash flow deals. Don't buy things that are going to cost you money on a day-to-day basis if what you're seeking is financial freedom here in the short term. But understand that but you're probably not ever going to get rich on 1 or 2 houses. The way you get rich, the way you get that significant cash flow in the long term, is to turn that equity into something else.
Yeah. You said that you kind of plan out and think about having these houses for 10, 20, 30 years, but you don't end up having them that long. How are you able to build up all that equity that you're able to 1031 exchange down the road in that short of a time period?
Great question. 2 ways. One, I got really damn lucky. Pardon my French. Got really, really damn lucky when I bought. I've been buying over the last several years. It's been a healthy run up. That's been great. You get the loan pay down that you get every single month. The other piece is I work with off-leash construction or other. Before that, I was working with other contractors to go force equity. You buy the house for $100,000. You invest $60,000 into it. It's not worth $200,000. I've just built $40,000 worth of equity right there. For those who are familiar with the Burr math, if you can do that, you get all your money back out. You get to go and run that thing all over again. So that's largely how I've been able to do it. Is I've forced equity through finding creative ways to improve a house. Finding, hey, I've got the ugliest house on the street. How do I go make it look as nice as the house next door? I have a 3-1. Is there a place I can toss that extra half bath or that full bath? Can I turn it into and have a master bedroom in the house? Like, is there an opportunity to do things like that add incremental value? Can you convert a garage into living space? Like, lots of different options exist to change the equity of a home by being the most creative person in the room.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back and touch on the whole garage and maybe
Yeah.
like ADUs, adding those onto properties. But first, I was curious, what's kind of like, what do you see as your bread and butter right now? I know a lot of people always say like a 3-2 is what their bread and butter is, above 1,500 or around 1,500 square feet. What property you don't get any details of what the rents are or anything, but you see it's got a bed bath count and maybe a couple other details. Which
Yeah.
property are you clicking on?
Yeah. So I generally, at this point in my investing career, I'm not buying a house where I can't find a way to add significant value to the house. Just going in there and finding an ugly house and touching it up, generally speaking, isn't going to be enough to do that. So the things that I'm generally buying in today's market, and I think people can have a lot of success with this, are these 2-1s, these 3-1s, where you're able to find that extra half bath, that extra full bathroom in those houses. So yeah, my bread and butter are 2-1s and 3-1s. That then we're able to add that extra value. The reason you do that, especially if you're going to hold it long term, yes, you change the value of the home substantially. You add, an extra bath might cost you $10,000, $12,000 at most to do it if you've got a competent contractor. But the change in value of the home is often $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 because it changes the comp pool very substantially. Nobody ever compares a 3-1 to a 3-2. Like any appraiser who does that deserves to be fired on the spot. So that's not something that tends to happen. So I want to find those things that have disproportionate changes in the equity that I have in the house. So it means I have to hunt for a lot more deals. The other reason I like it, if you're going to be holding it long term, is the kind of person that lives in a 2-1 or a 3-1 is probably not going to live there long term. That's going to be a shorter term tenant. Somebody who lives in a really nice 3-2 is going to stay there for a lot longer. It's got more opportunity for the family to grow in that house. Most of my relationship with my wife, we have had 2 bathrooms. We had to go down when we moved here to Indy for a little while into a 3-1, and let me tell you, it was painful to have a 3-1 after having lived in a 3-2 with my wife for all those years. So it's definitely a challenge. So I think you get a higher quality of tenant in those 3-2s who are likely to pay rent and stay longer.
I definitely always look for a place to add an extra half bath. I think it makes just the quality of living so much higher. Even a half bath, having a place for your guests to use the restroom. So
Oh my
definitely
gosh, yeah,
helps.
absolutely. I don't want anybody in my bathroom.
Nobody does.
Yeah,
Nobody does. You got to have a guest bathroom. You keep that one nice, and you can do whatever you want to your other restroom.
absolutely.
Like I said, coming back to garages and ADUs, garages, it's a little bit different play. You can add living space. Sometimes you
Mhm.
can get an extra bedroom out of it. But the really big play, and one that's been catching on over these past few years, is the whole ADU situation. A lot of different hurdles and stuff you got to jump through in order to get one of those things off the ground. But just high level, what have you been seeing with ADUs? Have you been doing any of them?
Yeah, it's not something that we've actually done ourselves, and the reason for that, there are a couple of reasons. One is the level of difficulty on it is quite high from an execution perspective, and I don't mean from a contracting side. That's no different than any other house, but from a regulation perspective, getting the approvals, and financing is super difficult on those things. Historically, from what we've found, at least for investor clients. The other side that a lot of people just aren't thinking about is that repair costs are often a whole lot cheaper than replacement costs. So essentially building something new is so much more expensive than repairing what already exists in addition to the acquisition cost. So we haven't found it financially viable on the kind of properties, these 3-1s that we're converting into 3-2s. With that said, we actually do have a client that we're working with right now that we're working on a carriage house that's a garage that they're putting an apartment above it. And so we're helping them through that. The level of difficulty is so much higher. He needs to pull in an architect, not just a contractor. So the architect needs to go out there. They need to to actually design it. Then you need to get the zoning approval. Then you need to get the platting done appropriately. All of that before you ever are sure that you can do it. Once you've been given the approval, that's when you're able to break ground and begin the building. So it's not something we've done historically. And I think fundamentally, it's a huge issue with the market today is that the cost of building something new and the regulations associated with building something new make it unfeasible so that we're not actually adding housing to a market that really needs it.
Yeah. Yeah, it does suck, the zoning aspect of things. I hope that we get more lax here in Indianapolis. We'll see how that goes, but I definitely do agree with that.
Yeah. Well, and you would think here in one of the reddest states in the country that zoning wouldn't be a problem, but it does tend to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is, I guess. I am like a little ignorant on that. Like I haven't been through a deal where you have to get permits and zoning kind of approved. Who takes care of that? And when you get a client that's saying they want to put a carriage house, are they going
Yeah.
through all of that approval process, or are you helping put them through that as well?
Yeah. So the zoning side, that's all going to be on the architect. That would be the architect that would tackle that side of things. The permits, that's all on the contractor. Once the zoning has been approved, once the plans have been approved, submitting the permits is the responsibility of the contractor.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I figured that's how it went, but wasn't 100% sure.
And let's have a very transparent conversation here about permits in general. Like skipping kind of the carriage piece. In any carriage house situation, you're going to need all the permits in the world. But generally speaking, permits are required for most of the construction that's done here in Indianapolis. Would I say that most construction has permits pulled on it? Absolutely not. And so understanding what the important things to have permits on is kind of important. Is that a path you kind of want to go down? Or
Yeah,
like the strategies?
I'm down talking about it. I think that's something important people don't talk about. You can get screwed not having permits.
You can totally get screwed not having permits. You can get screwed having permits too. And so fundamentally, permits are going to slow down the process and add to the cost of the process. The reason they exist is one, it's a revenue driver for the state, but on top of that, it's almost like a quality assurance, like that says, hey, this contractor is actually qualified to do this job. So I understand why homeowners would want that. I understand why the government would want that. The downside of it is, like I said, the cost and the time associated with getting those permits back and permits approved and then checked on the back end. So investors are often moving very, very quickly. And the extra month and a half that might result from having to pull permits throughout the entire process of a major renovation, that's expensive. That's time that it's not on the market. That's time that they're paying interest on the property. And so what a lot of contractors do, wouldn't necessarily say Off Leash did this on the record, but what Off Leash does is we try and pick the things that the city is likely to identify, because if you don't pull permits and the city identifies that work's being done, that then you're going to have a stop, and then you're going to have to pull permits on the project in general. So with that in mind, we tend to find that interior work doesn't necessarily require permitting. It doesn't tend to get flagged for permitting if you're doing interior work. Exterior work, though, does tend to get flagged. If you do exterior work first, they know construction's happening on the project. So if for any of the contractors, any of the handymen out there who are working, our recommendation, if you're trying to minimize the number of permits that are pulled, is to do interior work before you do exterior work.
Neat.
Yeah.
Exterior work, that's a whole rabbit hole, and something we need to take into deep consideration here in Indiana with winters.
Oh yeah.
How much does needing to do exterior work in the winter hinder being able to flip a property if it needs a new roof and new siding?
Yeah, it really makes a big difference. And it really just comes down to getting labor who's willing to be outside. It was -4 degrees for like 2 weeks here. Let me tell you, Nothing got done outside here in Indianapolis. Nobody was willing to do siding work. Nobody was willing to get up on a roof. It also isn't safe to get up on a roof in a lot of those conditions, particularly when there's been some precipitation. So yeah, it 100% slows you down from a construction perspective, and that's a kind of another consideration from a scheduling side. Like, hey, if you know you're entering winter, do that exterior work first. Screw it. Like, pull the permits if you got to, get the exterior work done first, because you're going to get held up. You're not going to be able to paint if it's -4 degrees outside. You're not going to be able to put a roof on. You're not going to be able to put gutters on. All of those things are going to get held up. So you want to try and get when the getting's good. Like right now, for some reason, as we're recording this, it's like 65 degrees outside. We were doing all of our exterior work today because we know it's going to get cold here again in the next couple of days. The other thing to consider is, like, people don't buy during the winter. People don't go out when it's cold to like walk houses. They don't go to open houses. So our flips tend to sit a little bit longer during like the end of November, December, early January. Now we're starting to see things pick up, but you're just going to have less traffic. So if you can try and time things appropriately, that you do the exterior work at the middle of November, all the interior happens over the winter. You hit the market on February 1st. That's one hell of a winner there, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting all that appreciation while you're letting your house get worked on. I'm always excited to see that. I mean, this is going to be my first full year working in the market, and I'm super excited to see how appreciation plays into it. We had a crazy looking year last year, so hopefully this will be my first semi-normal year in Indianapolis real estate. We'll
Oh,
see how it
buddy,
ends up
I
going.
don't think we're looking. I don't think we're looking for a normal year here. I think this is going to
Semi.
be a weird. It's an election year. I think we're going to have some weirdness.
Yeah, I do find myself saying that phrase more and more. It's an election year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who knows how it's gonna go, man? Who knows? Looking back at your business and how it's grown over time, could you give us an example on both extremes, like maybe your favorite flip and then maybe the one that didn't go so well?
Oh man. Okay. So I'll kind of give one example. I'll start with the bad one, as I think about, because I've got so many good ones that I'm really actually quite proud of. The worst one I ever did was with the contractor that convinced me that I needed to bring Paul inside. We were struggling from a quality perspective. This project was way over budget, way over time, and this house, I won't say the address. It was I had an inspection done on the front end. It was a relatively cosmetic job. We were going to redo a bathroom, redo the kitchen, new flooring throughout, just kind of the basic stuff. This wasn't one of my bread and butters where I was actually adding an extra bathroom, and sold the house. It was way longer than it should have been, cost way more. And I no longer then worked with this contractor because there were so many issues. And this individual bought the house. We negotiated, everything went great. They had an inspection done. Unfortunately, after the fact, again, this is the value of not working with a glorified handyman. We found out, or the buyer found out, that the toilet was actually just draining into the crawl space, which was not accessible for the inspection. So in that scenario, I wasn't aware of it. Obviously, I wasn't aware of what was happening. The buyer and the inspector that looked at it on the front end of the purchase weren't aware. So who's liable in that situation? When your contractor is less than honest and just doesn't do the plumbing. I ended up settling out of court. I was threatened with a lawsuit, and so I settled, given that I have a name and a reputation, so this guy could go and get it repaired and have his house safe, because that was months of waste that was just dumping into the crawl space. It was a really bad situation. So that's the worst it ever got. I'm still chasing after that contractor. I don't expect to ever get that money. But yeah, it was that one was bad. That's what we're trying to protect people from here in Indianapolis. The one of the ones I'm more proud of. God, there have been so many over the last several years, particularly since we in-house the construction. The one I'll really shout out that I think we did a good job on was a really nice entry-level house here in actually Noblesville. You can look it up if you want. 1299 Grant. We ended up purchasing that house. It had, mainline issue. It was actually mislabeled as a 3-1 when it was already a 4-2. And so we didn't even have to add the bathroom, but it was like mislabeled with the wholesaler. And so we got a great opportunity, a great purchase. And I think it turned out so darn nice, so darn pretty. Really happy with that one. And I know the person who moved in there's been pretty darn happy. We've actually received a couple of notes from them about little touches
Sweet.
in that house that they were happy with. So that's one that I would say is kind of an entry level home here in Noblesville. I think it sold for like $290,000. But it was a really nice one for somebody looking to get their first home in Hamilton County.
I tried to look it up real quick. I couldn't find it. I'll link it below or something. If you can go look
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
it.
I mean, we've got a bunch of good ones. If people want to take a look at some of the real estate porn type stuff, they can go on our website. We've got a bunch of them at offleashconstruction.com.
Sweet, man. Sweet.
Yeah.
Do you get like a whole bunch of gratification out of flipping houses? Do you find it like really rewarding to give somebody that opportunity to live in a great house in a great neighborhood?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we have really enjoyed. And at some point, you should definitely talk to Paul on one of these podcasts. I think you'd get a real kick out of it because he approaches it from a very different point of view. And where Paul comes at it, and I agree with this wholeheartedly. He would always work here in Hamilton County his entire career. He has a 20 plus year career as a carpenter and contractor here in the Indianapolis market. And he never worked on a house under $1 million for years and years and years. And so when, I had him come start working with me, I'm like, all right, you have $60,000. You'd say, for the bathroom? No, for the house. Let's get this done. And the thing that we really he comments about this regularly is like, man, when I first started doing this, I didn't get it. Now seeing that everybody deserves a good home, everyone deserves a nice, safe, good home, is something that we get a ton of value out of. Like doing another flip for me, I like it doesn't really get me up that much anymore. Like I've done so many of them over the last several years. But I'll tell you, it's helping the investor who is getting started, helping the homeowner on their house. That's the part that kind of gets me going now a little bit more than doing just another flip for myself. That's kind of become a little bit rote from that perspective.
Okay, I got you. You
Yeah.
became a little bit more involved in the customer service aspect of it.
Absolutely. Actually, I want to add one other point there, that I hope everybody hears, whether or not they work with us. Like that's an irrelevant point. I think as investors, as people who are working here in the Indianapolis market as homeowners, everybody who just lives in a home that you own, that you've touched, deserves to have a nice, safe place to live. What we tend to find a lot of times is a lot of these, again, the lower end, the investor friendly contractors, they tend to be a little bit hungrier and they're willing to compromise on the quality or telling you what actually needs to be done in a house. If your house has knob and tube wiring and you got to touch the electrical, you got to rewire that house today. Like we're not willing to touch a project that has knob and tube wiring that we're not allowed to change because it's fundamentally a less safe technology. And if it breaks, it has the potential to have significant fire hazards. If the plumbing's shot, like you got to get those things fixed. If the roof is shot, like all of these things, like you have a responsibility as an investor. You have a responsibility to advise your clients on like kind of the next person that lives in that home deserves a really nice, safe place to live. Not just us lining our pockets as investors and contractors and agents.
Yeah, I always prefer working with clients that are willing to go a little bit farther on getting a place up and ready
Yeah.
for people to live in. Anybody can buy a house and stick a tenant in there, but to do it and do it good and have a good reputation and make an impact in the community, going the extra mile helps everybody in the transaction. It really does. Makes the world a difference for sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And trust me, once you do it on the front end, especially if you're going to be a rental owner, and Julius, you can attest to this as a property manager, if you do the work on the front end, it's not going to come back to bite you later. It's going to cost so much more to do those infrastructure things later than if you just tackle it on the front end.
Yeah. And now also doing things as they arise is more expensive because you're having people come and do multiple trips to your property rather than just having 2 weeks or even a week. before getting the property listed and getting all of those things addressed. Now, there's going to be some things that'll pop up once people are
Of
living in the
course.
home. That's always how it goes. We've got one
Even
right
on a
now.
newly renovated house,
Yeah.
something's going to pop up.
Yeah, this house I've got right now, the doors are drafty and a couple of the outlets don't work. It's like, oh man, thought we got all the bases covered. And like the doors being drafty, some people would gloss over that in some facts, but really, like, we're having the furnace work harder, so like that's impacting the condition of the property, and the tenants are also having to pay more for their electricity bill. Like, we don't want that either.
No, absolutely not.
Well, perfect, man. This has been a great conversation so far. I wanted to throw it to you real quick to see if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrapped up and headed to our conclusion.
No, I think leaning in as much as you possibly can here to the education piece, listening to these podcasts is absolutely huge. Understanding the 5 wealth drivers of real estate we talked about earlier, just as a reminder, you've got cash flow, appreciation, loan pay down, tax benefits, and inflation hedging. Those are all really, really important when doing an entire ROI calculation. The last thing I'll just say, as you're doing those ROI calculations, wow, it's been a long day. That was hard to get out there. Make sure that you're accounting for things appropriately. If you guys need a calculator, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm more than willing to share the ones that we use, both from a value add or just a buy and hold perspective. But understand that, hey, yes, you need to account for the purchase price, the closing costs, the agent commission. All of those things are kind of the default. But the other things that you need to be thinking about on a month-to-month basis, and again, I've got a PM here on the call who can attest to all these things. But you can't just look at the rent minus the mortgage. That's not the way this works. Yes, you need to be accounting for the PM fee that you're going to be paying on a monthly basis. On top of that, if your PM charges a lease-up fee, you're going to need to be accruing for those things today, because eventually that place is going to be vacant. So if you think it's going to be 3 years, take that lease-up fee, divide it by 36 months, and you need to be accruing for that on a month basis to understand your cash flow. You need to be accounting for the fact that repairs are going to come up on your property. 100%. I don't care if your house is brand new. Something is going to break in that house eventually. So you need to be accruing on a month-to-month basis. We usually use somewhere between 5 to 8% of the income of the house. Just setting that aside and understanding that, hey, 5 to 8% of this income is going to go towards the repairs eventually. 5 to 8% of the rent we actually do to CapEx as well. CapEx is a little different than repairs. CapEx are kind of the big items. It's the roof, it's the water heater, it's the furnace. It's like the bigger items that are slowly dying in your house. The longer you own a house, those things are degrading over time. So you're going to need to replace them. So make sure you're setting that aside on a month-to-month basis. Taxes, insurance, all those things as well. But make sure that you're accounting for all of those. So if you guys need a calculator, feel free to reach out. I've got a pretty easy Excel one that I'd be more than willing to share with people. I get sick to my stomach whenever I just see somebody looking at the rent minus the mortgage minus the PM fee and maybe the taxes and insurance. It's just like, oh God, you have no idea what you're in for here, buddy.
Yeah, I'm missing a couple things. Things. And I don't remember if it was the Bigger Pockets or the On the Market podcast, both affiliated together, but they just had an episode out about depreciation and bonus depreciation on those CapEx items in the house as well. So get educated on that as well if you are looking to get into investment real estate. Important to
Absolutely.
know. So our conclusion questions here kind of already gave us a little bit of an answer. I'll ask it again. If the listeners were to take anything away from your conversation today other than account for things like maintenance and CapEx, what should that be?
Yeah. I probably should have talked a little bit more about this, but it's okay to pick the middle option. So there's generally, if you get a quote, you're going to have a high quote, a low quote, and a middle quote. If you get 3, the cheap one's probably going to change order you out the wazoo. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. The high end one probably has a different vision for the house than what you do. Understand that there's oftentimes a nice middle ground, but if it's too cheap, it's probably too good to be true, I would say, is kind of the number one takeaway. That's what I really fell into with the investor type of contractors over the last several years. So I'm hoping people, whether or not you work with us, find somebody who's qualified, who's good, who's not one of these handymen in disguise.
Yeah, that's great advice. If listeners were to find you in your natural habitat, where would that be?
Oh boy, I'm a super boring kind of guy. And so my, my brain doesn't stop unless I have a little downer juice, which you can see behind me here. And so generally speaking, if you were to find me in my natural habitat, it would either be in a nice bourbon bar or sitting on the ground playing with my 10-month-old, because that those two are about the only things that get my brain off of work.
Awesome, man. Awesome. You got a lot going on. Raising a
Uh,
kid's no joke.
Absolutely.
What are your top three places to go in Indianapolis?
My gosh, there's so many freaking good places here in Indianapolis. Um, if I'm thinking from a food perspective, there are a couple of restaurants we love. Peterson's and like Root and Bone. Peterson's is in Fishers, so I don't know if that counts, but it's close enough. It's right there
It
on the
counts.
edge.
It counts.
That was our favorite restaurant. We actually had a table there for a little bit when we lived in the area. There was like a donation thing that they did for us. But then on top of that, Root and Bone down in Broad Ripple, absolutely fantastic. There's a little place actually right up the street there from Root and Bone that I think everybody should check out if they come to town, specifically on like a Friday or Saturday night. It's called the Brick House, and it's a dueling piano bar. It is so much fun. My wife and I try and go there as much as we can. Harder with a 10-month-old. It's been a minute since we've been down there, but it is so much fun. You will have an absolute blast. And if you just want a good drink, there are a couple of them here in the Indianapolis market, but tied to many of the Wolfies here in the area are these little restaurants called Broken Barrels. They're these cute little whiskey bars that are super fun, and we refer to the one here in Carmel as the Office for having meetings. Any one of them after 4 o'clock.
That's awesome, man. I got
Yeah.
to give a shout out to three of mine. I'm re-shouting out Canal Bistro. Went there again recently. Wonderful Mediterranean place in Broad Ripple. If you got to go to a spot in Broad Ripple, I love it there. MOTW, also not in Indianapolis, but off of Old Meridian up in Carmel, Muslims of the World. That coffee shop has amazing baklava. They're little tiny squares, but it is so, so worth it. And I went to, what is it, Firebirds over in the Carmel up by Keystone
Oh, that
for the
place is
first.
good.
Yeah, I went there for the first time the other week. We had a lender take us out to lunch, and that place was dang good. I'd never been there. I've heard a lot of hype about it, but it's a good spot, especially if you got somebody to meet up on the north side for a meeting. It'd be a great location.
Absolutely. Good choices. Yeah, we just had a meeting there the other day too. So I can highly second that one.
It looked like everybody there was having meetings. That's
Yeah.
kind of looked like what the vibe was. Well, thank you so much for your time today, man. Where can people find more about you if they need to?
Yeah, absolutely. Best way to get in contact with me is Nick at offleashconstruction.com. I respond to every email. I respond to most emails, assuming they're not spam. But pretty darn responsive on that one. If you want to see some of our work, though, you can check us out on Instagram at Off Leash Investments or Off Leash Construction. Same on Facebook. And then if you want to see some of our stuff on our website, offleashconstruction.com, we're here to help people make the right decisions on their houses and talk them out of 2/3 of them.
Perfect. Leave us, everybody, here today with a quote from Will Rogers, the actor. Don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait.
I
That's
love
all I
that.
got for us. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thanks.